One question shakes the core of religion and politics in Africa: who truly holds more power, the Pope or African leaders? Power is influence. It is the ability to lead minds, command systems, shift cultures, and even decide what is right or wrong for entire nations. But in the battle of influence, this video will break the boundaries of tradition and politics to dive deep into a question few dare to ask. We're not just comparing titles or offices, we're comparing influence, spiritual authority, global respect, and the power to shape people's lives. The Pope leads over 1 billion Catholics worldwide with spiritual authority, yet African presidents command armies, control economies, and make national laws. So, who really controls Africa? Is it the man in white from the Vatican, or the men in suits sitting on golden chairs across Africa? Let's find out. Please subscribe for more bold and mind-opening content like this. Now, let's break it down into chapters. Chapter 1: The Pope, the voice of 1 billion souls. The Pope doesn't have a military. He doesn't sign national budgets or pass laws. But when he speaks, over 1.3 billion Catholics across the world listen, including millions in Africa. That kind of influence is not built on force, it's built on faith. The Pope lives in a small city called the Vatican, yet his spiritual presence stretches across oceans, languages, and cultures. He can change global conversations with just one speech. He can call for peace and wars will pause. He can speak on poverty, and the richest nations will respond. That is power, soft power, the kind that doesn't force you to obey, but makes you want to follow. In Africa, Catholic churches run thousands of schools and hospitals. Many of them are in places where the government has failed. So when the Pope speaks, many Africans feel he's not just a religious leader, he's a caretaker, a protector of their values and even their survival. Politicians come and go, but popes leave legacies. The Pope doesn't just lead prayers. He sets global agendas. When he talks about climate change, world leaders listen. When he speaks on injustice, presidents take notes. And here's the deepest part: for millions of Africans, the Pope represents God's voice on earth. That alone gives him a kind of power no president can buy. Because you can't vote out God. So while African leaders may rule over land and law, the Pope often rules over hearts and minds. And when you control the heart, you control the soul of a nation. Chapter 2: African leaders, kings of the land. African leaders control countries. They hold the keys to the army, the police, the money, and the media. They sign laws, rule parliaments, and can even change constitutions to stay in power. That's real political power, the kind that can arrest, silence, or reward. When an African president speaks, entire systems move. Schools close. Markets react. Roads are built or destroyed. This is territorial power, where one man can decide the fate of millions within borders. But there's a problem. Many African leaders come into power with good intentions and leave surrounded by corruption, fear, and broken promises. People begin to fear them instead of respecting them. And what is power without respect? Some of these leaders build statues of themselves, change schoolbooks to make themselves heroes, and silence journalists who speak the truth. Yet, their power dies the moment they leave office, or worse, when they die. Why? Because their power was based on position, not purpose. And even while they control billions in state funds, many African countries are still poor. Roads are bad, hospitals are empty, and schools lack teachers. So the people start looking for hope, and sometimes, they find it in churches, not in government. Yes, African leaders have real control over the land. But control is not the same as influence. The Pope doesn't control countries, but he changes lives. African presidents rule territories, but the question remains, are they ruling minds, or just managing problems? Chapter 3: Power of the Mind, Influence over People. True power is not about how many soldiers you command. It's about how many minds you influence. The battle between the Pope and African leaders goes beyond politics and religion, it touches the heart of human belief. Who do the people trust more? Who shapes their dreams, their fears, their moral compass. Many Africans grow up hearing more from their priest or pastor than their president. In churches, they hear about forgiveness, love, eternity, and heaven. From politicians, they hear about taxes, elections, and power struggles. The tone is different. The message is different. One speaks to the soul, the other to the system. When a nation believes in something deeply, it becomes unstoppable. And many Africans believe in God more than government. That's why the Pope, a religious figure thousands of miles away, can inspire faith, courage, and unity more than some presidents can. A leader who rules the mind rules the future. That's why dictators are afraid of thinkers, teachers, and preachers. They know that once you lose the minds of the people, you've already lost power. The Pope doesn't need a microphone in every city. His presence is in hearts. That is where he rules, and that's the most powerful place to be. So while African leaders may have armies, the Pope has something stronger, the loyalty of the soul. Chapter 4: Wealth, Resources and Reach. Money is power. But what happens when the ones with the most natural resources still remain poor? Africa is rich. Rich in oil, gold, diamonds, and fertile land. Yet many African nations are trapped in debt and poverty. Why? Because wealth without wisdom becomes a curse. Now let's look at the Vatican, a city so small it can fit inside a football stadium. But its influence stretches across the world. The Catholic Church owns billions in property, schools, hospitals, and institutions. It receives donations from every corner of the earth, including Africa. The Pope doesn't need to own land to control it. Through missions and aid, the Church feeds children, trains teachers, builds clinics, and educates millions, often in places the government has forgotten. That is how the Church buys influence. Meanwhile, many African governments borrow money to build roads that never get finished, or hospitals that don't function. And yet, they still claim power. The Vatican may not mine gold or pump oil, but it is strategic. It invests in people, in institutions, in loyalty. That's wealth with wisdom. And that is far more powerful than owning resources you can't manage. Chapter 5: Hidden Power Structures, Puppets or Masters. This is the chapter they don't want you to hear. Because it exposes the hidden strings. Many African leaders don't fully control their nations. They take loans from the IMF and World Bank. They sign deals with Western powers. And many times, those deals come with conditions that affect local laws and policies. Some of those conditions come from religious influence, especially from the Vatican. Colonialism may be over, but mental colonization still exists. Missionaries were the first to enter many African villages before the government. They brought the Bible, built schools, and taught obedience. But behind that Bible was a system of influence that still exists today. In some countries, politicians are careful not to go against the Catholic Church. Why? Because they know the people trust the Church more than the state. They fear being called anti-Christian more than being called corrupt. So who is really in control? The one who sits in office, or the one who shapes minds? And let's be honest, some African leaders are just puppets. Puppets of foreign governments, foreign churches, and foreign businesses. Their crowns are polished by outsiders. Their speeches are written for international approval. Meanwhile, the Pope speaks freely and the world listens. This chapter reminds us that power is not always seen. It is often hidden, in systems, in minds, and in beliefs. Chapter 6: Final Verdict: Who holds the true crown? So after all these chapters, who really wears the crown of power? Is it the Pope or African presidents? If power means controlling laws, then African leaders win. If power means influencing hearts, the Pope wins. If power means wealth, it depends on how it's used. If power means legacy, the Pope may never be forgotten, but many presidents are. The Pope doesn't need borders. His church is global. His people are everywhere. His legacy is eternal. African leaders work within countries. Many of them are forgotten once they leave office. Some even flee in shame. So who has more power? The Pope has the deeper power, the power that lasts. The power of belief, trust, and legacy. But African leaders have the immediate power, the power of now. The power to change laws, build cities, and shape economies. The real answer? We need both, but we must ask which one is truly using their power for the people. Chapter 7. Spiritual authority vs. political control. Let's look deeper. Political control is the power to command. Spiritual authority is the power to convince. One use is force. The other use is faith. African leaders command through policies, taxes, and security forces. But the Pope convinces without any force. He speaks and people follow, and not because they are forced, but because they believe. That's the true difference. Command can last for a moment. But conviction lasts forever. African presidents may need guns and media to spread their power. The Pope only needs a pulpit and a prayer. Spiritual authority touches every part of life, how people live, how they marry, how they raise children. It even decides what's right and what's wrong. And here's the twist, even African leaders seek the Pope's blessing. Many of them travel to the Vatican, kneel before him, and ask for prayers. That shows who really holds the spiritual crown. Chapter 8, Global Image and Respect. Who do they listen to? When the Pope speaks, world leaders listen. UN diplomats listen. Presidents pause. Even atheists take note. But when an African president speaks, who listens? Mostly their citizens, and not always with full attention. Respect is a kind of power that cannot be faked. The Pope's voice shakes boardrooms, parliaments, and protest movements. He speaks against war, greed, and injustice, and the world responds. Meanwhile, many African leaders are battling corruption scandals, election violence, and global criticism. Some are feared. Few are truly respected. The Pope doesn't need to shout. His whisper carries weight. That's global respect. That's global power. Chapter 9, The People's Loyalty, God or Government? Ask the average African in a crisis, who do you run to, your government or your God? Most people run to churches. They look for help, prayers, hope, and healing. Because they trust spiritual leaders more than politicians. That loyalty is powerful. African governments often fail their people. But the church, especially the Catholic Church, is often where the people find shelter. That loyalty gives the Pope a kind of invisible army, loyal followers who will rise, march, vote, or even die based on their faith. That's a level of power no politician can buy. So when we ask who has more power, the final answer may not be about weapons or wealth. It may come down to one thing: who do the people believe in the most? Subscribe if this opened your mind. We're here to ask the questions others fear, and to speak truth with boldness.